It was Alfie's 18th birthday, and the air inside our modest flat in Manchester was filled with the soft flicker of candlelight and the sound of cheerful voices. A small chocolate cake stood in the center of the dining table, its surface dotted with uneven white candles. I stood quietly in the corner, watching him press his palms together with eyes shut tight. "I wish for Grandad and Granny to live long," he said softly, "and for Dad to get that big job promotion with the pay rise." Everyone clapped and cheered, his father, Neil, the loudest of all. I took a slow breath, then stepped forward with a smile, my heart filled with fragile hope. Alfie looked at me for a moment, and his face hardened. Then, without blinking, he said in a flat, emotionless voice, "I wish you'd finally divorce Dad. The farther away you are from us, the better." I froze. My smile faded like a candle snuffed out by the wind. Neil burst into laughter beside him and patted Alfie on the back. "Well, that's what you get, Maggie, for riding him so hard all these years. Serves you right." I felt my legs wobble beneath me, but no one noticed. I stepped back quietly as the room filled with laughter and voices again. No one saw the silent collapse inside me. 3 weeks later, I watched them leave. Alfie, Neil, even Neil's mother, all wheeling suitcases past our front door, barely looking back. I stood outside in the bitter March wind, clutching the edge of my cardigan. "Alfie, please," I begged. "Please don't do this." He pulled his arm from my grasp and shook his head. "I've already found Dad someone better. She's sweet. She listens. You're not ruining this new start for us." They disappeared into a black cab. I stood there long after the exhaust had faded, after the cold had bitten through my skin. I went back inside, sat on the edge of my bed, and stared at the picture of Alfie when he was 6, holding my hand at the beach. That winter, I died. There was no dramatic moment. Just a quiet ending in a rented room above a closed bakery, where no one came, and no one called. The infection started in my leg. I had no idea how long I'd been lying there. No one noticed the smell. No one heard the silence. No one missed me. But then something impossible happened. When I opened my eyes, it was morning again. A faint breeze came in through the curtains. And from the other room, I heard someone shout, "Come on, Mum, the candles are melting." I sat up. It was Alfie's 18th birthday. Again. The familiar smell of chocolate cake and cheap candles filled the air again. I stepped into the kitchen in a daze, unable to believe what I was seeing. Alfie was right there, setting up the table with Neil. Neil's voice echoed with the same laugh I thought I'd never hear again. I felt like I was drifting between two worlds, one where I had died, and another where time had looped backwards. I checked the calendar. It was the same date. The same exact day. My body trembled, but I forced myself to speak. "Alfie," I said quietly, "can I talk to you before everyone arrives?" He didn't look at me. "I'm busy, Mum." There it was again, that same coldness. My heart twisted, but this time, I said nothing. I waited. I watched. I listened. When the guests arrived and the cake was brought out, I didn't make a wish. I didn't speak. I watched Alfie close his eyes and say the same words he always did. Then, when it was my turn, I braced myself. Again, the same cruel sentence fell from his lips. "I wish you'd finally divorce Dad. The farther away you are from us, the better." And again, Neil laughed like it was the greatest joke in the world. But this time, I didn't flinch. I didn't retreat to the shadows. Instead, I quietly left the room and went into Alfie's bedroom. The door creaked open as I stepped inside. The same posters were on the wall. The same stack of comic books on the floor. But something new caught my eye. There was a crumpled envelope under his pillow. It had my name on it. My fingers shook as I opened it. The letter inside was unfinished. It started with, "Mum, I wish you knew how tired I am. You always shout. You never listen. Dad says you're the reason I feel like this." I sat on his bed, holding the letter. My chest tightened. All those years I thought I was holding the family together, maybe I was just holding Alfie back. But then I remembered the other life, the empty flat, the silence, the way no one had come for me. There was more to this than a single angry letter. I had been erased from their lives. I left the letter where I found it. The day continued exactly as before. Alfie's bags were packed. The black cab arrived. I stood outside, pleading again. And again, he pulled away from me. Again, he said the words that shattered me. But that night, when I returned to my room, I whispered to myself, this time, I won't die. I stayed awake, afraid to sleep, unsure what morning would bring. When the sun rose, the room looked the same. The curtain danced in the same morning breeze. From the other room, I heard it once more. "Come on, Mum, the candles are melting." It was still Alfie's 18th birthday. By the third morning, I no longer felt fear. Only a sharp, simmering awareness that something was terribly wrong. Each sound, each glance, every single moment played out exactly the same, like a scratched record stuck on repeat. Alfie's words. Neil's laugh. The taxi. The cold wind. I moved through the day like a ghost who had already lived it all. Because I had. But I was no longer trying to stop them from leaving. I was watching. Observing. Looking for the slightest difference, anything to break the cycle. That's when I noticed it. As Neil passed by me in the hallway, on his way to fetch his suitcase, he glanced at me, not with cruelty, but with a flicker of hesitation. It was the first time his expression didn't match the last two loops. Later, when I wandered back into Alfie's room, the envelope was gone. Instead, on the floor beneath the radiator, I found a torn photo. It was from a holiday in Cornwall, years ago. Alfie was maybe 10. He was standing between Neil and me, holding both our hands. But someone had scratched out my face with pen. I sat down, holding the photo, feeling a cold pressure in my chest. I didn't remember this version. It wasn't in the last two loops. Something was shifting. That evening, as I sat in the kitchen pretending to drink tea, I caught a quiet conversation in the hallway. Neil was on the phone. His voice was low but firm. "She doesn't know a thing. She just keeps replaying the same day. No, we're still set to leave. No changes." My blood turned cold. Who was he speaking to? How did he know I was reliving the same day? This wasn't just a coincidence. This was something deeper. Something far more sinister. And that night, as I lay awake once more, I remembered something I hadn't before. There had been a doctor. A woman. She used to visit me before I fell seriously ill. Dr. Hughes. She'd always taken the time to explain things to me, never rushed. But one day, she stopped coming. Neil said the council stopped funding home visits. I never questioned it. Until now. Morning came again, the same words from the next room. "Come on, Mum, the candles are melting." But this time, I didn't go to the kitchen. I picked up the phone and searched for Dr. Hughes. Her name was still listed. She was practicing in a private clinic on the other side of Manchester. I rang. A soft voice answered. And when I told her my name, there was a pause. Then she said, "We've been trying to reach you for years. We thought you were dead." I told Dr. Hughes everything. The days repeating. The letter. The photo. Neil's strange phone call. She didn't interrupt, not once. When I finished, there was silence on the line, followed by a sigh that carried a weight I couldn't place. "Margaret," she said gently, "you need to come in. Today." It was the first time in this loop I left the flat. I walked past the cake, past the candles, past Alfie and Neil who were still preparing for the evening. No one stopped me. No one even asked where I was going. I wrapped my coat tightly and stepped out into the bitter Manchester air. It took 2 buses and a walk through a quiet part of town to reach the clinic. The receptionist looked up, startled. She began, then paused. Dr. Hughes is expecting you. I was led into a warm office lined with old books and photographs of happier times. Dr. Hughes looked older, tired, but her eyes still had that same gentle clarity. You don't remember? She asked. Remember what? She took out a folder, thick and creased with age. My name was printed across the top. You were part of a memory reconstruction trial. After your breakdown. Neil consented. The goal was to stabilize your mental state by letting you relive moments you couldn't process. But something went wrong. You were never meant to be kept there. I stared at her, mouth dry. You mean, this day, Alfie's birthday, is artificial? She nodded. It's a construct. A loop created by your mind and memory intervention. You were meant to wake up once you processed the trauma. I gripped the arm of the chair. What trauma? She looked down, hesitant. The accident, Margaret. The fall. It wasn't just an infection that brought you down. You were found unconscious with severe head trauma. There was suspicion, but Neil said it was a slip. He signed every form. He never allowed us to speak directly to you again. My hands began to tremble. All this time, I thought I had been left behind. But I had been silenced. I don't want to go back to that flat, I said quietly. I don't want to see them again. Dr. Hughes leaned forward. You don't have to. We can try to bring you out. She reached for something on the table, a small remote, a monitoring screen blinking with colored lines. But if you return, you must go in with purpose. With control. That memory is no longer a cage. It's your key. I nodded. She placed a headset gently on my temples. And just like that, everything around me flickered. A moment of weightlessness, like falling backwards into water. Then I opened my eyes. And Alfie was calling from the kitchen. Mum! The candles are melting. But this time, my mind was sharp. My steps were steady. And I was no longer afraid. This time, I didn't follow the script. I didn't smile when Alfie made his wish. I didn't flinch when he threw those words at me again. And when Neil laughed, I met his eyes. He hesitated for the briefest moment before looking away. I saw it then. The mask. This version of Neil was confident, loud, mocking. But underneath, there was something else. A flicker of discomfort. A tremor he couldn't quite hide. I waited until the room quieted, then quietly slipped into their bedroom. I had never dared to come here before. Not even during the other loops. I found his suitcase lying open on the bed, clothes neatly folded. But tucked into the side pocket was something strange. A small, locked journal. The kind he never let anyone touch. I picked it up. In this space, in this memory, things responded to my focus. I could feel it. I held the journal in both hands and concentrated. The lock clicked open. The pages were filled with his handwriting. Notes. Lists. Dates. And then, I saw them. Spoke to Dr. F. Loop holding. Margaret unaware. Continue sedation through injection in water. Alfie believes she's recovering. Good. Another entry. If she starts to remember, use medication to disorient. Hughes pulled from access. No further contact. I dropped the journal. My heart thundered. They had never left for Switzerland. It was a lie. All of it. A story Neil fed to Alfie. A fabricated success to mask the truth. I wasn't trapped in a memory because of trauma alone. I was kept there. Monitored. Controlled. I rushed out of the room and went straight to Alfie's. He was sitting on the bed, tying his shoes. "Alfie," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, "can you tell me something?" He looked up at me, surprised. "What? Where are we going today?" "After the party." He blinked. "Switzerland." "Why?" Because Dad said we're moving there. He got a job there." "And what about me?" Alfie frowned. "He said you were going to meet us there later. That you were getting better." My throat tightened. "Have you ever seen a passport? Plane tickets? Anything?" He hesitated. "No. But he said everything was taken care of." I didn't ask. I reached out and gently touched his hand. "Look at me, Alfie. Just look." And in that moment, I saw something shift behind his eyes. The confidence cracked. Confusion crept in. He whispered, "Mum, are we still in Manchester?" I nodded. "Yes, love. We never left." Once the illusion began to unravel, everything else followed. The kitchen no longer smelt of sugar and vanilla. The candles on Alfie's cake were still, unlit. The laughter faded like distant echoes in a long corridor. Even the light seemed dimmer, as if the sun itself had grown tired of pretending. I no longer played along. I went back to the bedroom where I had found Neil's journal and searched the drawers. There, beneath old insurance forms and worn-out socks, I found a small key labeled "back cupboard utility room." I didn't remember ever seeing that cupboard. But in this strange, half-real version of my world, things seemed to appear when I was ready to see them. The utility room was at the far end of the flat, through a narrow corridor we never used. The walls here were bare, cold to the touch. When I unlocked the cupboard, the smell hit me first. Chemicals. Bleach. Metal. Inside, hidden behind a stack of boxes, was a compact medical trolley. Vials. Syringes. A clipboard with notes in Neil's handwriting. Doses. Dates. Reactions. My hands shook as I read the list. The entries were consistent. Daily administration. Tranquilizers. Memory suppressants. He had kept me subdued. He had fed Alfie lies. And he had controlled both of us. There was no job in Switzerland. No life abroad. Neil had created a story strong enough for Alfie to believe, and a drug strong enough to keep me silent. I heard the front door slam. Neil had returned from his errands. I closed the cupboard quietly and slipped back into the hall. I stood there, still, waiting. Listening. His footsteps came closer, slow, confident. When he turned the corner and saw me standing with the key in my hand, something flickered in his face. It wasn't surprise. It was recognition. "You've been snooping," he said calmly, as if I'd merely opened the wrong drawer. I didn't answer. "I told them you were too fragile. I said your mind couldn't handle the truth." I kept my gaze on him. He stepped closer. "You're not going to ruin this. Not after everything I've done." "You mean the lies?" I asked softly. "The control. The drugs. Or the fact that you let our son believe I was the one breaking this family." He stiffened. For a long moment, we stood there, two ghosts facing each other in the ruins of a life that never was. Then a voice broke through the silence. "Mum." "Alfie." He had heard it all. Alfie stood at the end of the hallway, motionless. His trainers were untied. His phone dangled loosely in one hand. His eyes bounced from me to Neil, then back again, as if trying to calculate the truth from the tension hanging in the air. I could see it happening, everything unraveling behind his eyes. The years of doubt. The strange silences. The sudden changes he had brushed off without question. All of it rushing back like a tide breaking against a fragile dam. Neil stepped forward. "Alfie," he said, his voice calm and syrupy. "Don't listen to this. Your mum's unwell. You know that. We've talked about this." "No," Alfie interrupted, voice firmer than I'd heard in years. "You talked. I listened." His hand tightened around the phone. His gaze never left Neil. "You lied, didn't you?" Alfie said. "There's no job in Switzerland." "There never was." Neil's mouth opened, but nothing came out. I felt something shift in the air. "Where's her medication, Dad?" Alfie asked. "The ones you always said were for her heart. I saw the box last week. I looked it up." His voice cracked slightly, but he didn't stop. "They weren't heart pills. They were antipsychotics." Neil finally found his words. "I was protecting you. Protecting her. You don't understand." "I understand you trapped her," Alfie said, stepping closer. "And you made me believe it was her fault." My hands trembled, but not from fear. From release. "Alfie," I said gently, "you have always been kind. Even when you were angry, it wasn't you. It was never truly you." He looked at me. His eyes welled up. "I remember, Mum," he whispered. "You used to sing to me when I was little. Every night. But then, one day you just stopped." I nodded. "Because he made me stop." Neil took a sharp breath and turned sharply toward the door. But Alfie was faster. He stepped in front of him. "No more running, Dad." Silence fell again, thick and full of years unspoken. Alfie's hand reached for mine. I took it. And in that moment, everything around us began to flicker. Walls blurred. The flat shimmered like heat on tarmac. I could feel the illusion coming undone, piece by piece. The loop was collapsing. But I held on to Alfie. I wouldn't let go. Light, sharp and white, pierced through the dark. A cold sensation touched my face. The warmth of a real hand replaced the illusionary touch I'd known for what felt like forever. Voices, soft, urgent, echoed around me. "Her vitals are rising. Margaret. Can you hear me?" I tried to speak, but my mouth felt heavy. My eyes fluttered. And slowly, the world came into focus. A hospital room. A real one. No birthday decorations. No laughter. No cake. Machines beeped in steady rhythm beside my bed. A nurse leaned over me, relief washing across her face. Beside her stood a woman with tired, kind eyes. "Dr. Hughes. You made it," she whispered. I wanted to ask how long I had been gone, how much of what I had seen was real. But I couldn't form the words. "Not yet." I simply nodded. She smiled and gently placed a hand on my arm. "It's over. The sedatives have cleared. You're in the recovery wing. And you're safe." I turned my head slightly. On the chair near the window, hunched over with his head in his hands, was Alfie. Older. Taller. Real. He looked up slowly as if sensing me watching him. Our eyes met. And something in his expression broke. He stood, trembling, and walked to my side. "Mum," he whispered, "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. They said you were gone. They said you didn't want to see me." Tears blurred my vision. "I always wanted to see you," I rasped. His hands found mine, warm and real and shaking. It was Dad. He took everything. When I started asking questions, he said I was ungrateful. "I didn't realize what he'd done to you." I should have come sooner. I shook my head slowly. You came now. That's all that matters. We sat there for what felt like forever, hand in hand, no longer trapped in memory, no longer separated by lies. Just mother and son, stitched back together by truth. Outside the window, the trees swayed gently under the grey English sky. A nurse came in with tea, and the world carried on, quietly, honestly. My name was no longer a ghost in someone else's story. I was Margaret Ross. And I had finally returned.